When it comes to old PC games, sometimes they don't really like to run on newer hardware or they have conflicts running with newer types of software. So unfortunately, Hitman Codename 47 has been shelved. So here's the Legend of K Anniversary instead.
This game was originally released in 2005 and got average reception, so why there's an anniversary edition is beyond me, especially since a series never spawned from this one and it's the only title. It was developed by Neon Studios, Capcom published the original PS2 version, Dreamcatcher published the DS one, and Nordic Games published the anniversary edition. The only thing the anniversary edition sports is updated graphics, better models and textures with everything upscaled to 1080p and 60 frames per second. It's pretty good graphically, although for some weird reason the hands on K are separated from him, so his arms end in stubs with his hands placed over them, which tells me that they were having issues rigging the wrists when building the models. I don't get this because the models were redone. The art style is good for what they were going for, the animation is passable, it's not bad but it's nothing to write home about. It's not up there with other games like Jack and Ratchet, and they tend to reuse a lot of animations, giving it an overall cheap feel. The music is okay, it's what you'd expect from a game that's using ancient China as a setting, but the voice acting is terrible. It's so horribly done. It's laughable in the beginning, but then it just gets annoying because the dialogue is so badly written. The insults are the equivalent to schoolyard name calling, and while you may think that it's a kid's game, there is some mild swearing only in the beginning, and it shows one of the characters getting drunk. K controls alright, not perfect, but passable. Moving and attacking is responsive, the double jump has a 90% chance of success, and K has a lot of moves to his repertoire, like crouching, dodging, blocking, throwing, using magic, and he's very capable in combat. Combat, however, is pretty much slogging through enemies that take way too many hits to be defeated. As I got further into the game, I noticed that the controls became less responsive. Not to the point of unplayable, but enough to be annoying. There was this one puzzle where I needed to destroy demon jars that rotate around a branch in the mud. I had to use my sword and claw weapons. There was 3 issues with this. You need to be super close, which means you might get damaged by the electric jar, so if you get touched by it, you'll fall into the mud, possibly sinking in, taking damage, and respawning on the ground. After the first attack, there's a brief pause, so if you attack a sword jar, the claw jar will pass by you. And finally, switching between weapons is too slow for this puzzle on top of being unresponsive at times, so the only way to do this puzzle seems by luck. Even the small enemies take several hits to take down, and if they have armor, it'll be an even longer battle. Eventually I learned to wait until they started to block, dodge roll around them, if the game would allow me to do so, and then attack them from behind, and that seemed like the fastest and easiest way when it came to dealing with enemies. Also, using items like bees and magic attacks helped shorten the length of battles. And combat isn't hard. K is very agile when fighting, but it just takes too long to finish off the enemies. You can perform something called combos. When you smash a demon jar or kill an enemy, you get a point, and by pressing the block button and a direction that you want to go in, you'll be going towards that enemy or demon jar. It's kinda like a rudimentary lock-on, as it's not an actual attack. It works better in the air than it does on the ground, and I'm questioning the collision detection with some moves. K has a move where you press crouch while moving to roll, then jump, and then the attack button to do a smash attack, and sometimes it seems to connect and sometimes it doesn't. As I've been on top of an enemy and nothing happened, but I've also been far away from an enemy and something happened, and vice versa. Eventually you'll get more weapons. I got the final sword upgrade at the halfway point of the game. You can also buy armor and health potions from a merchant that pop up every once in a while, so there's not that much challenge to combat. It gets rather busy since the only thing the game can do is just send armored enemies at you to increase the difficulty, but I would just mash buttons and come out victorious. It's just slogging from combat section to platform section to puzzle section, and it's not just about combat. The game also has a lot of platforming. This is where the jumping seems off at times, and not because of the jumping mechanics, it's the way the levels are designed. Some things are just at the maximum height or length of K's jump. I've had difficulty getting onto certain platforms because they were just at the height at the top of K's double jump, so there's times where he was just slipping off, and there's some platforms where he won't grab the edge of. I've also had issues with swinging off of things, as there seems to be a very specific point at which you can jump off of. It's like trying to hit that $10,000 space on the Wheel of Fortune, but hitting bankrupt instead. And I would would get stuck on the geometry several times and end up taking damage because I got stuck, especially in water sections. Swimming is a pain in the ass as you can only do it for a short while. You're not going underwater, nor are you able to, so I don't see the point of this restriction other than to be an annoyance. These aren't major things that would ruin the platforming experience, but they make them discouraging for exploration. In one area called the Swamp of Death, which would have been recorded had the game not crashed my capture device, had me jumping across small platforms that were the maximum distance of K's jumps, had bees that would attack you once you landed, and then there was mud that you could sink into and cause damage before you respawn on the ground. I managed to reach the end with 1 hit point remaining out of 10, and my reward? While I did get the most powerful sword and red armor, awesome, but then I had to go back through that gauntlet of death again to go back to the main area.
So instead of designing a shortcut that goes back to the main area, the developers decided to give me a set of armor, as if to say, yeah, we're too lazy to make that shortcut, so you'll need this.
This is terrible level design. In games like this, if there's a gauntlet that has a prize at the end, there's supposed to be a shortcut back to the beginning so that way you don't die on your way back and lose your reward. The game's camera does you absolutely no favors when it comes to platforming. You can pan the camera left and right, but you can't go up or down. You can zoom in or out, but that's not as needed as looking up or down. To go into first person, you need to click and hold the right analog stick to do this. This makes platforming sections that are in enclosed areas troublesome, like in the Frog City, where you need to save frog eggs inside of buildings. The camera doesn't help you in the slightest, so it's a matter of making leap of faith jumps. Speaking of level design, this game tries to emulate The Legend of Zelda, but instead of having a large open world where you can go anywhere, it's pretty linear. You might have a little bit of a hub area, but you'll eventually leave that area once you complete the chapter and you'll go on to the next one. One of the more curious things that I noticed is that this game has a live system. I question as to why they would have a live system, especially when extra lives are kind of rare to find. The game has a save system when you pass by these red lantern things, and you can get 4 extra heart containers at the very beginning of the game, increasing your hit points from 3 to 7. It gives you the first, and you can buy 3 more from a shopkeeper for 200 coins each. And you do get that much money really quickly. And by the halfway point, I had 11 hit points. This game is easy enough so that the life system is pointless, even for 2005 when it was originally released. And the story is pretty much about Kay freeing his country from a tyrannical rule of gorillas and rats, and it's about how there's a legend of a cat that will do it. It's a by-the-numbers story. It's like those made-for-TV cartoon movies for kids where the protagonist is a kid and they go and save their world. If you've seen one of those types of stories, you've seen them all. I would be more interested in the story if the voice acting wasn't so terrible, if the characters were written better, and if the dialogue wasn't filled with babyish insults. I played the game with my speakers muted because of how terrible it is when the characters talk. You can't even skip cutscenes unless you've died and have to repeat them. And I never would have known that if it weren't for the one time I died. When you free animals from cages, they talk too much, and you can't even skip it. You can skip the comic book looking cutscenes though, which is good. Because these characters are so annoying and their voices are so grating on the ears, and you can't skip the dialogue, I don't care about these characters, and I don't care about the story enough to complete the game. This is the type of game that I can only recommend if you get a steep discount. The game normally goes for $20 and I paid $5 for it on a Steam sale. If you want to play a game like this, I would recommend Okami instead. It looks, sounds, and plays better with a more entertaining story. Well, let me give some specifics. If you're a kid, you may get more out of this than I did. Personally, I was very bored with the game. Even my recording device fell asleep at times as the game caused it to become unresponsive, making it so that I needed to exit the game and reload it so that I could make different recordings. And I'm not trying to sound like I'm bashing this game either, but on a personal level, it's just boring to me as the combat is more tedious than fun. The characters and dialogue don't help the story, and on a technical level, it needs polish for the minor blemishes that seem to hinder what possible fun I could be having. It feels like a bootleg Star Fox Adventures. And maybe I'll revisit this game at a later date and reassess my thoughts, but for now, this game is just meh.
I can only recommend playing this game at a pretty cheap price. It's not bad, but it's just annoying in many aspects. And there's so many other platform adventure games that have done this better, like Skylanders, Banjo-Kazooie, even Ty the Tasmanian Tiger, a game that I said did not age that well, is better than The Legend of Kay. So if you want an adventure platform game, you got many more choices.